Recording in progress, it says. Oh. Okay, just a sec. You're looking pretty good there.
Good. So my name is Albert Banerjee, and I am a research chair in community health and aging at St. Thomas University. And I'm here chatting with Nathan Vanek, and we're talking about aging and the contemplative aspects of aging and what aging means, and the role of biology and social relationships in aging. So Nathan, thanks for doing this with me.
Nice to see you. My pleasure.
Could you give folks a bit of a biography a little bit about who you are?
Absolutely. I love talking about myself. I feel very important. I'm 70, born in Toronto. My dad was a judge, although if you want to know how the justice system really works, it's my mother that usually made all the decisions. And I went to York University. And during that time, I fell ill and I ended up leaving. And I don't know how much you want to get in. I don't want to get into too much of it. But anyways, one thing led to another, and I became fascinated with Eastern philosophies and specifically Dhyan Yoga or meditation, and ended up in 1975 in India with UN Goenka, and later on with Swami Sham for 25 years, and came back in, I came back in 1998, and I've been in Quebec ever since, Wakefield area, which I love. Wakefield, Saint Cecile de Macham, Gatineau Park, and that's about it.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'm curious, when we tend to think about aging, it's often about biology. We think about aging as sort of the changing body, the deteriorating body, so to speak. What is your experience as a 70-year-old of the importance of biology in aging and growing old?
You can't really get away from that. I mean, that's the way it is. Things are, you saw me using 2 pairs of glasses to look at a certain icon on the screen there for a minute. I often can't hear very well if there's ambient noise. I still recall the first time the dentist said that, oh no, that tooth is loose, we got to take that one out. And I ended up leaving that office with 2 less teeth in the front. And I remember how that affected my, just the way I looked at things, at the world, really. It was, in a sense, as unfortunate as that process is, there's some good aspects to it.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
How so?
You let go, little by little.
What did you let go of?
Well, you have a funny thing. Everybody has this thing we call the ego, self-image.
Mm-hmm.
And that day when I left the dental office, that ego was a little smaller because I had to walk around like that for a couple of weeks.
Oh, really?
Until we could put something else in there to make me appear as though I'm a normal human being. And that process continues. I remember the last time I went to the dentist, just to use the same example, to take out virtually one of the very last ones that was still in there. And then as we finished and I came out, the lady at the desk who was accepting my MasterCard asked me if I would like to schedule a cleaning. And I said, what for? I said, do you charge by the tooth? So, and you see things happen with your carcass that wasn't supposed to happen, or at least you don't really like it, outside of the vision, the hearing, the teeth. I mean, these days, most people don't lose their teeth. little things on your body that weren't there before, or
Mhm.
you can't move quite the same way. You know, people ask me, because I still play basketball quite a lot.
Mhm.
And they say, how you doing? How do you do that? I said, well, to be honest with you, I run as fast backwards as frontwards, but you know, so there's that reality. You could say it's a harsh reality of the deterioration of the biological aspect of the, you can't get away from it. It's just going to happen. Everybody's got to sooner or later let go of that ego as
Right.
they get older and older until eventually you let go of this body like an old worn out coat. You let it go.
And what about,
Excuse me.
yeah,
It's interesting to finish off that
sure,
little
of course.
issue by saying that everybody has to learn to accept that. It's the acceptance of it that's interesting and important.
Okay. And that doesn't happen naturally, I presume, or does it? How have you experienced it?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, some people, I can't speak for anybody. I have witnessed different people dying in my life. I have
Mhm.
quite a few actually. Um, you know, the last conversation I had with my old dad,
Mm.
he's lying in bed. We think he's gone, but eventually I'm sitting there in a dark room and he opens his eyes and he says, Nathan, is that you? I said, yeah, Dad, I'm still here. And he said, well, why am I still here? I said, I don't know. And he said, well, who the hell knows? I said, Dad, maybe it's not your time to go. And he said, don't you tell me it's not my time to go. And he lay down and that was it. Some people accept it and they're very ready.
Yeah.
You know, other people I've witnessed are not ready. They're not ready. They don't want it. They're hanging on. They're
Right.
attached to this body, which is understandable.
Mm.
I love it.
And has anything helped you with the process of accepting or working through that?
First of all, I don't like to think of myself as that far along as I'm describing my old dad, but you know,
No,
if
of
at
course.
all I have accepted the inevitability of the throwing off of this old coat, as I like to say, I would have to say I've been a student and a practitioner of, as I said earlier on, Dhyan Yoga meditation, and that has been, well, the greatest gift of my life. It
Mm.
was given to me freely in the early 70s by, I was a Vipassana monk with UN Goenka. Some of your students might have heard of him. And later on with Swami Sham, whom I lived with for many, many years, as you know.
Mhm.
And if anything has helped me in my life, not just accept the gradual demise of my incarnation, but issues and situations all along the way, I would have to say it's the practice of meditation.
Yeah. And could you say a little bit about it, if you don't mind, in terms of what it is and
Sure.
how it's helped you?
That's my subject. And also probably the most important part of this discussion. You see, you know, in the last couple of years, we were told because of the nasty virus that's been let loose on us, on the whole of humanity, to stay home.
Mm.
Stay home, stay alone, don't go out. And at that moment, because we're going back a couple of years at the very beginning, I thought, well, if anybody should be okay doing that, it should be me because of my training and my natural bent. And so I did. Other people were not happy with that at all.
Mhm.
Many suffered. I have neighbors who suffered pitilessly. And I know many others who just refused.
Mhm.
They just would not isolate. I didn't blame anybody for any way of thinking. I accepted any way of thinking, but I accepted my way for myself. But I have to say that a lot of my observation and perception of people who found it really difficult,
Mhm.
who found it impossible even to stay alone or to stop, to become inactive for a while, they're wired, because from the moment that we're born, we have these sense doors that are looking outward. They're all facing outward, whether it's harsh or touch or vision or hearing or movement, and all from the moment we're born, we
Mhm.
are conditioned to be active. And that's very right. It's very natural. As a meditator, one has a desire, if you will, for lack of a better word, to understand that there's another side of that coin of who and what we are. Like when we were an infant, we were in a bliss state and we were inactive, but we were happy, we were blissed out. But little by little, even as we grew up, our elders told us, don't daydream, keep progressing, keep producing, excelling. So we gained more and more layers on top of who and what we think we are. And we became very active.
Mm.
And so this idea of stopping was antithesis to our understanding. And I always tell people who come to me that it's actually, you'll find it often more, it's easier to run around the block 5 times or for 20 minutes than to sit quietly for 20 minutes or 10 minutes or 5 minutes. People have a hard time doing that. It's the easiest, absolutely easiest, most natural condition for any human being, but we are so conditioned otherwise that we find it difficult to regain that side of the coin. We need both. And so to get to your point, as the years go on with the practice of learning to stop,
Mhm.
learning to let go, because that's basically what we're doing, we're letting go and relaxing, it becomes very, very useful. It becomes a facility that we have that we can never say enough about the profound use of it, the ways that it helps us. You know, when somebody insults you, you know,
Mhm.
this ability to let go. I'll just give you one example.
Sure.
Because we have practiced, let's say, use the word equanimity.
Mhm.
What do I mean by that? It's pretty simple. Here's the essence of meditation, as a matter of fact, for your viewers, if anybody's interested that might be watching. And since you've asked, and please stop me if it's
No,
not
no.
appropriate.
Go ahead.
I'll break it down into 3 simple parts. It's too simple. Most people want the trappings. They want the bells and whistles. I'm going to tell you the essence right here. First, to stop. Just to take a few minutes in the course of your busy day, not to sleep, just to sit down and stop. That's number 1. That in itself has great, tremendous benefits. But of course, you can stop, but you're still going to be thinking. You can't stop those mental projections so easily. You can't stop the noises around you. You can't stop the memories in your head, the good or bad. Everything is either good or bad from our point of view. We like it or we don't like it. You can't stop the odors, you know, maybe from cooking or whatever. You can't stop a lot of the input. You
Mhm.
can stop a lot, but then there's still a lot that you can't stop. When you're sitting, you've decided to sit
Mhm.
and just watch. That's good enough. Just be that watcher, uninvolved. Don't try to hang on to the good feelings. Don't get away from it, just enjoy, but don't try to hang on. And don't try to get away from the not so good, within reason, by the way. So you have a nice feeling, you have a not nice feeling. Just be the watcher. You have a nice noise in the background, you have a not nice noise in it. Be the watcher, uninvolved. Third, that number one was stopping. Number two is a practice of just being the observer, uninvolved. We call it equanimity, the practice of equanimity. So what happens before I get to number three? Sometime later in your life, you've been practicing, but somebody throws you an insult. You don't even notice it. And even if you notice it, you don't need to react blindly. You've got that power. It's the power of being the watcher, of just observing and having a moment's ability to hesitate before just reacting blindly, to
Sounds like
act creatively.
sounds
Sorry?
like it's a muscle. Sounds like it's a muscle that you can develop.
And very, very good point. And the point also is this, that you're bringing up, very good point. This is not hocus pocus. This is not flaky. This is a practice. The practice of equanimity, the practice of being the watcher, has tremendous, profound effects on us in our day-to-day life, both inwardly and outwardly. And third is technique, which I'm not going to get into. It's not the time for that. But technique is the practice of being one-pointed, of being able to keep your attention on one point. Now, by the way, there are many misconceptions. One of those misconceptions, just to end off, is that we think we need to stop thinking. Even a previous student of mine, I saw on Facebook the other night from Bali, and she's sitting with some guru, because I never tell people I'm not a guru. You go, after sitting with me, I've told you what I believe to be the essence of what this practice is and how profound it is, and I encourage people to make it a daily practice. But I also tell people, get other perspectives, go. You don't have to stay around me. I'm not that person. So I say on Facebook that she's with this guru, very beautiful young Indian fellow, and a good talker. He's not guru, but she's accepted him as guru. I hope that everything's okay. But I see, she says, I have a hard time stopping my thoughts. What do you think about that, Guruji? No, I told her years ago, no. You think of it like a wild stallion. Let the thoughts come, let the thoughts go, and eventually they settle down on their own. Don't hem it in. Let the wild stallion have a big pasture and just be the observer. Either you like it or you don't like it. Don't try to get away from it. Don't try to hang on to the good. Well, you just be the watcher. And then the interesting thing about the technique, though, is little by little, it becomes more and more interesting. The practice of stopping, the practice of equanimity, and specifically the practice of the technique. One-pointedness, like just to use the analogy of reading a good book. You lose yourself in that point of attention. You almost lose a sense of time because you become very involved. You lose yourself in that. It's the same with technique, only this technique is very close to who and what you are. You can't get closer than a proper technique. This is not the jumping around technique that this guru was explaining. Meditation, active meditation, that's fine. Active meditation is great, whether it's running or music or whatever. People tell me all the time, meditation, my meditation is listening to music, no argument. Then I only add one thing. When the music is stopped, the song is done, maybe don't get up right away to put on another one, but internalize it. Follow that feeling of that piece of music to where is it coming from within you? And put your attention there for a few minutes. So that's going from the grosser to the more subtle. This is all I should say at this time with this situation, because it's not appropriate to carry on, I think. So meditation is a profound, suffice it to say, practice that is allegedly going to help me when at that time when I'm lying on that bed, like my father was lying on that bed. And all the different experiences from before, I can certainly understand, but let me explain something more to you about that. When you meditate, what are you actually doing? In a sense, you're stopping, you're letting go of what? Of who and what I think I am. What happens to you in deep sleep? Who were you in deep sleep? Afterwards, you say, oh, that was pretty good. Feel good, rejuvenated. Meditation is similar in that regard, that you don't necessarily get to that state of the deep sleep or samadhi, we call samadhi that, where you let go of the conscious idea of yourself as an individual. But use the analogy of deep sleep. Were you even existing at that time? Who was I? You know, Ramana Maharshi used to say you should continuously ask yourself who and what, who are you? Who am I? Who am I? So at deep sleep, who are you? Who was I then? And so the practice of meditation is very similar to that, because we love deep sleep. And little by little, we love meditation. You might find it a little difficult at the beginning because it's too simple for us, having, like I said before. But little by little, you start to love it. You start to look forward to those moments of deep relaxation, letting go. So what are you actually doing when you sit down? Even never mind all the rest of it, equanimity, technique, and just this idea that I'm going to sit down and do nothing for 5 minutes. What are you doing? You're letting go of yourself in a sense, and I hope I won't be offending anybody's sensibilities by saying this. You are in effect letting yourself die. You're letting go. What do they say? You get over yourself. You know, for 5 minutes, you get over yourself, who and what you think you are. So you let go. And you basically, didn't somebody famous once say, I die daily? What does that mean, I die daily? What did that person mean by that? Very interesting. I'm not here to answer all these things. I have many more questions than answers, by the way. But I do know that in meditation practice, you're essentially practicing dying little by little every day. You're not letting go of being a grown-up human being. You're adding something to that, a consciousness of the other side of the coin of who and what I think I am, or who and what I actually am. So suffice it to say, meditation is a powerful, powerful tool for the practice, for the aging process, without a question. And although like I said, I haven't gotten to that point yet where I can confirm all this, I like to think, and there's many examples, by the way, Sri Yukteswar, most of the viewers won't know who I'm talking about, but he had been a little bit ill. He was a very well-known, famous, I guess you could say, Guruji in India. He was the guru of Yogananda. He got all his disciples together and he said, let's meditate now. They meditated, they were all meditating. And after a long, long time, he just kept meditating. And then the chelas, the pupils or disciples eventually, you're not coming back. They call that Maha Samadhi, the ultimate meditation, where he died. It took them a long time to come to that conclusion. There's more to that story, but that's enough.
Amazing. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And when you're talking about meditation, you're talking about letting go of yourself, that sense of self that you think you are in the busyness and the doing of the day. Are you also coming to another understanding of yourself? Perhaps a simpler one? Because you said you need to ask yourself that question of who are you? So,
okay. The philosophy is that at the very base of who and what you are is something we call Atma or pure self or one life permeating all. That as a meditator, eventually one cognizes, if you will, recognizes or recognizes what you were before you had a body, what you will be afterwards. They say, well, I don't want to use Sanskrit terminology, which my brain goes to very easily. Let's just say that one self that permeates all, like there's one water that permeates all the individual waves on the ocean. There's one string which connects all the individual beads of a necklace, one sap running through all the individual leaves on the tree. There's one life that permeates all. And eventually the idea is in meditation practice that one reaches that state where one understands. And at this point, I have to tell you that as a yogi, as a meditator, I deal only with experiential knowledge, not book knowledge. I have so far told you the philosophy in this regard about the one life that permeates all. That's the philosophy. My experience is very deep in regards to meditation practice and samadhi, or the deepest of meditation. Now, I don't believe anybody really knows any better than I do about meditation. That's my ego, if you like, but that's how I feel. And my understanding is, my belief is that there is one life that permeates all, that we are all one. Doesn't matter what color, doesn't matter your skin, doesn't matter what heritage, doesn't matter what gender, doesn't matter what shape or size. We are, in fact, all one life. And it's almost, in my view, a form of insanity to think otherwise, which so many people do. That's called duality, you know. And so I have that belief because it, at this point in my life and my practice, it just seems so logical, number one. Number two, it is intuitively my belief. I believe it intuitively. And number three, to a great extent, experientially through meditation and samadhi. It's not a definitive statement with me, as many great masters and teachers will intimate that they have all the answers. You know, like I said before, I'm not that guy. And I also would like to say that that inquiry continues, even if you believe that you have experienced that beatitude where you understand the God consciousness of the oneness and all that. I know people like this, by the way, and you do too. So that's wonderful. Let's just assume that they're more experienced in this regard than I am. Then, and I have a great deal of depth in this knowledge. Where did that come from? Where did that one life come from? Who was the first mother? Where is the beginning? Where is the end of this existence? You know, so this inquiry continues anyways. However, having said that, let's not minimize this. You know, Thich Nhat Hanh, he just passed away.
Yeah.
And he was absolutely unequivocal about this, that he is not the body. He's not this beginning that has a beginning and an end. He is that very life itself that is permeating all. And he's not dying in a negative sense. He is expanding to become one with the whole, you know? That's the philosophy. To a great extent, I believe in that philosophy.
Thank you.
Does that answer what?
It does very well. And I wanted to ask you a question that's a little bit tangential to meditation, but concerned with this idea of an interior life. Because when we think about aging, we tend to think of the bodily changes, as I mentioned. But there are schools of thought that focus more on contemplation and various practices of contemplation. And the key idea to that is a respect for the interior life of human beings. And I wanted to ask you a question about your interior life and how important that is in your life, either when you were young or now as you've grown up. How important is that for you?
Really good question. And there's two things I'll say about it. First, very quick and easy. The next is a little bit longer. First is that there's no inner and outer. It's all one. Inner life, outer life, it really is all one. And you see that little by little as in the practice of meditation, when you're supposedly becoming more and more familiar with your inner life. So little by little, you understand that, you know what they say, as above, so below sort of thing, or that, no, it's like the practice of meditation is a microcosm of your life.
Right.
When you're sitting in meditation, you know, and practicing equanimity, being the watcher, uninvolved, unattached to getting away from those things you don't like or trying to hang on to those things that you like. It's part of your life. This practice is your life. So the inner life, okay, it's very important. Now I'm using your terms, okay? I'm alone. I've been alone most of my life, except for the odd blip here and there. I've been alone. I come from a background that was not, it might have been even predictable that I would have ended up as a monk and a yogi and now an old guy sitting in my room alone. It was, but then there's my training anyways. From early on, from the age of 20 and onward, I have been practicing in a relatively, not relatively, very extreme manner, this practice of being alone. So for me, my inner life is most important. In other words, being alone, I'm very comfortable with that. I actually can't imagine it being any other way at this point. I'm so attached. I love it. I love my solitude. I love being alone. I love people. I love being around people. We all need to find a balance. But for me, because of my practice of Dhyan Yoga, I have become more that side than the other side. Everybody, like that girl I was telling you about on Facebook the other day, she was saying that she found it hard to do Vipassana meditation and because it was too much alone. I get that. This is a matter of dharma. Your natural bent is different, but she wanted to be more active. I never tell people to sit alone, silent for 10 days at a time, although I did many of those. I did many months of those. I did, I guess you would say, years of those, of that. But it's important to have that ability to be alone. Okay, now I'm not sure if stop me if this is not what you want, what you're kind of going for in this question.
Mm.
In the process of meditation practice, you are essentially also conserving your energy by not being active for a little while. Some people take that to extreme. You don't need to. There can be a middle path. There should be a middle path. But some people in the world have decided to take that to an extreme. Why? Because and even before that, it doesn't need to be extreme. You can just, by practicing every day, little by little, you become more sensitive. You're going from the grosser to the more subtle. And the more subtle means you're becoming more in touch with yourself. You start to hear your heartbeat. You start to hear you start to become very familiar with your breath. You start to become very familiar with your heart chakra, or the Hridaya chakra, the love center of love and affection. You become more sensitive and more familiar with what you're calling your inner world. And as you do that and conserving your energy, because there's certain ways that people spend a lot of energy: talking, procreation, sports, so many different ways. We're always expending a lot of energy, and we stop all that for a little time every day, or maybe a lot of time. Maybe like me and others, there are many pockets of people around the world who have done what I've done. I don't recommend it, but that's, and which is that you've done that for months at a time, years at a time. In India, there are people in the caves that they only come out for the Kumbh Mela, once every 12 years, once every 4 years. Or in my case, I went to the Maha Kumbh Mela, which was once every 12 years. That was 1977. So why? Because little by little, what happens is that energy which is expelled is eternalized and sublimates from the more grosser substance, and I don't mean that in a negative sense, to the more subtle substance. It, like an iceberg, changes to water and then to gas and then to vapor. It's the same with the energy. We can expel it or we can keep it. You have to be careful with this process as a yogi, especially as a young yogi. But that's a whole other question, a whole other story. Little by little, the meditator starts to feel that there is an energy that gets released. There's many names for that. The most common is Kundalini, and there's a misconception that people think it's some dramatic snake cobra that rises up, No, it's a very beautiful flowering, a very beautiful filling of your, it can be dramatic as well, but that's another story. But it's really it's all that energy floods your system with goodness, with all that goodness that just helps with intelligence, helps with love, helps with something we call self-knowledge. So becoming familiar with your inner world, inner life, has been the story of my life, such that I can spend hours being very chummy with my inner life, my inner world, and then get up and go and meet people and absolutely adore their company as well. So yeah, and you need a balance. Most people don't have a balance.
Yeah.
Most people are too extrovert. They need to take some time each day. It doesn't need to be 2 hours a day. It can be 10 minutes a day, twice a day, let's say.
And can you tell me, what does it mean to be chummy with your inner life or your inner self? Does that involve reminiscing? Does it involve, is it just meditation, or is it involve daydreaming? I'm curious what you mean by that.
All of those things.
Yeah.
Now, I'll just elucidate a little bit more on that, enlarge a bit on that. As I said before, the stream of consciousness of the thinking process doesn't stop.
Mhm.
But there are times during this time when you're tapping into your, again, so-called inner life, when the thoughts do recede into the background very nicely, sometimes more, sometimes less. So I'll be meditating or sitting and just thinking and appreciating the thoughts, or even daydreaming. You
Mhm.
know, first time I ever met my teacher, my second teacher, although my main teacher was Swami Sham, first thing he ever said is, I was sitting in front of him and there was only about seven people there at the ashram in those days. And he starts telling a story about what happens to children in their youth. And he starts telling a story, and I was just sitting there for the first time, and my name, he says, let's just use the example of Nathan here. Let's say he's in grade 4, he had a teacher, Mrs. Brown, no Mrs. Brown, a very generic name, you know. Actually, I had a teacher in grade 4 called Mrs. Brown. And so he says, you know, and she catches Nathan daydreaming and hits him over the head with a ruler and tells him, stop daydreaming, stop that. Well, this actually happened. Everybody there was laughing, you know, great example, you know, but it's actually, he's telling what happened. I don't know how. I don't have an answer for these things. I've seen many things like that in my life, but I don't, but you know, the actual fact is the point that he was making and the point that I'm making is that daydreaming, you're spacing out, you're daydreaming, that's meditation. That's a form of meditation. You maybe close your eyes also and put your attention on the feeling of love and affection. Maybe there's somebody in your life that you love, maybe your pet chihuahua, you know, or your husband or wife, even if they're no longer with you, but you love them. You put your attention on that being or that creature, and then let go of the image of that and just follow that feeling to its core. Where is it coming from deep within you? And just watch that. Put your attention, that becomes beautiful more and more as one opens more and more. And so all those things that you mentioned are tied in together, you know,
Right.
and I can, if, now sometimes I sit down to meditate and after a little bit, it's like, yeah, okay, we get up and do stuff because it's not, you know, I wanted to be active,
Mhm.
you know, and that's, at that time, that's active meditation, like
Right.
that lady was talking about. It's just misconception. She's
Mhm.
just under a misconception. But there are those times, and other times it was the perfect time to sit down and meditate. And in that meditation, anything might happen. And
Mhm.
it becomes, as the years go on, I can't even describe to you how beautiful my so-called inner life has become. I
Mhm.
never expected it to be this unbelievable, excuse me for lack of a better word, bliss. It's
Mhm.
just so beautiful. It's the
Mhm.
most beautiful. It's unbelievable. At times it's just like I don't want to stop. There's times when I'm meditating and I go like, you really ought to get up, you know. You know, maybe Yukteswar was also saying that. Like, you really, it's been long enough. But maybe he just decided, no, this time I'm not coming back. I'm not gonna get up.
Mhm.
I don't know. Just ideas.
Mhm.
I'm sorry if I'm
No, I
going
just
on.
like that example of putting your attention on someone or something you love, and then dropping the person or the thing, but holding the love and following that, and you end up with the love. which seems to me like a very beautiful practice.
It is in itself a very valid and profound meditation technique.
Mhm.
It's not the one that I necessarily tell people all the time, but it's one that I would mention because anybody can relate to that
Mhm.
and do that. You have a person, let's say a person in your life, and you love that person, or you have loved that person. Maybe it's gone sour. Maybe it's no longer nice. Maybe they're no longer with you, but you at least have that memory of the love and affection and attachment too of that being.
Mhm.
Then let go and just follow the feeling. Where is it coming from within you? Where is it coming from within me? Where is that? Just follow that feeling to its very source. And here's one more thing I'd add to that. Two
Mhm.
things. One is understand that that feeling came first. Before that object of attachment came in front of your senses, you already had that feeling. The feeling came first. It's always been there. And before you had that object, so you don't need to grab onto that object and not let it go. You can understand this simple point. And the second thing is, when you're sitting and just feeling that feeling and following it to its source, think of that source, that place within you. I'm saying you, but I'm talking to myself at the same time. As though that space or place is like a still pond, like a beautiful, beautiful, still pond. The water is like glass. And a little pebble gets thrown on, it creates the ripples, the ripple effect. Think of those ripples starting to go out like vibrations
Mhm.
from that center of all that which is beautiful, which is healthful, which is full of vitality, the love and affection that's filling your whole body.
Mm.
Think of it, feel it. If you like to imagine it, then imagine it as being vibrations of life-sustaining goodness all throughout your whole body and beyond.
Mhm.
But first and foremost, you, because, and me, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't help others.
Mhm.
You are the first. There's the old story about the monks who were going across a river with a torrent of rapids. They're trying to get across. There was 10 of them. And at the end, at the other side, they're counting to see if everybody made it okay. And they keep counting 9. But they keep taking turns to count. They keep counting 9, but then a stranger comes along and says, okay, I'll count. And he counts 10. So what was the problem? And he said, you forget to count yourself. Everybody wants to help the world. You help this world first, this microcosm of the whole. Help this first, and then you can help. So if you sit and meditate and get the benefits of that meditation, you're not being selfish. You're doing something for your whole family, for your friends, your relations, for your whole community.
Mhm.
Nothing more powerful,
Beautiful.